The myth of motivation. You've been told that motivation is everything. That if you can just find the right quote, the right video, the right song, you'll finally feel that rush of energy that makes everything easy. It sounds nice, it feels comforting, but it's a lie. Motivation isn't power, it's permission, and permission fades fast. Real change doesn't happen when you feel motivated. It happens when you act without it. Because motivation is not a foundation, it's a spark. It flares up, burns bright, and disappears the moment discomfort shows up. There's a reason so many people start strong and fade quickly. They're addicted to the high of motivation. They crave the feeling of excitement more than the discipline of consistency. They start on Monday full of energy. They plan, organize, post about it, and imagine the future version of themselves. Then Wednesday arrives, they're tired, busy, maybe stressed, and that spark dies. The motivation fades, and suddenly everything feels harder. And because they've built their effort on feeling good, when they stop feeling good, they stop moving. This is the trap. The myth, the illusion that keeps millions stuck in the same cycle, inspired, motivated, discouraged, repeat. They don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they keep waiting for motivation to save them instead of learning to move without it. Motivation is emotional energy. It's unpredictable and temporary. Some days it flows, most days it doesn't. And if your growth depends on something that unreliable, you'll live a life of constant restarts. That's why disciplined people seem almost inhuman, not because they have more energy, but because they've stopped depending on it. They've replaced the question, "Do I feel like it?" with, "Is it necessary?" And if it's necessary, they do it. That's it. They understand a simple truth. The body follows the mind, and the mind follows the action. You don't need to feel motivated to move. You just need to move to start feeling motivated. Action first, emotion second. Think about it. Have you ever forced yourself to work out even though you didn't want to? You were tired, maybe irritated, but you started anyway. And halfway through, you felt alive again. The energy you were waiting for appeared after you started, not before. That's how it works. Motivation doesn't create action. Action creates motivation. This is why successful people look so consistent. They've learned that emotion is a lagging response. They don't wait to feel good before doing the hard thing. They know that doing the hard thing is what makes them feel good. They've reversed the sequence that keeps most people stuck. The myth of motivation teaches you to chase feelings. But chasing feelings is like trying to catch the wind. You'll spend your whole life searching for something that keeps moving. You can't build a stable life on unstable energy. You can't rely on temporary excitement to fuel permanent change. The truth is, most days you won't feel like doing what matters. And that's okay. You don't need to. You just need to do it anyway. Let's be honest. The real reason people cling to motivation is because it excuses delay. I'm not in the mood today. I'll start when I'm more inspired. I'm just not feeling it. Those phrases are comforting lies. They give you a way out, a reason to avoid discomfort without feeling guilty. But comfort is not your friend. It's the quiet thief of your potential. Motivation's real purpose is to start something, but if you depend on it to sustain it, you'll quit every time the feeling fades. Because feelings always fade. So the question becomes, who are you when the feeling is gone? Who are you when there's no music, no energy, no one watching? That's where growth is decided, in silence, when there's no applause and no adrenaline. Motivation is like the first push that gets a wheel moving, but once the wheel is turning, it's momentum, not motivation, that keeps it spinning. You don't need a push every time, you just need to keep rolling. Every small action adds friction to your old habits and momentum to your new ones. Every day you show up when you don't want to, you build invisible strength. Every repetition while unmotivated rewires your brain to say, I do this no matter how I feel. And that identity, not inspiration, is what transforms your life. Here's the paradox. If you stop chasing motivation and start acting without it, you'll actually begin to feel more motivated over time. Why? Because your brain starts to associate action with reward instead of pain. You stop seeing effort as suffering and start seeing it as proof that you're becoming stronger. You don't need more emotion, you need more evidence. And evidence is built through consistent action. When you show up again and again, even when it's inconvenient, you collect proof that you can trust yourself. That proof builds confidence, and confidence produces real motivation, the kind that lasts. Motivation says, I need to feel good to act. Discipline says, I'll act until it feels good. That one difference defines every long-term success story. Discipline is quiet, consistent, and sometimes painful, but it's reliable. It shows up when you don't. It carries you through the mornings you don't want to get out of bed, through the evenings when everything feels meaningless, through the days when your mind is loud but your will is weak. That's why it's more powerful than motivation, because it doesn't ask for your permission. When you stop believing in the myth of motivation, you begin to live differently. You stop judging your progress by how you feel and start judging it by what you've done. Did you move forward today? Did you keep your word to yourself? Did you do one thing that made you stronger, even if no one noticed? If yes, you're winning, even if it doesn't feel like it. Because the real reward isn't in the emotion, it's in the evolution. The myth of motivation also convinces people that growth should be exciting, that every day of progress will feel like an upward climb. But most of the time, growth feels like repetition, like routine, like boredom. That's what scares people away. They confuse the absence of excitement with the absence of progress. But improvement is rarely dramatic. It's often invisible. You won't always feel yourself getting better, but one day you'll look back and realize that the small things you forced yourself to do added up to something massive. When you rely on motivation, you live reactively. When you build discipline, you live intentionally. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline becomes who you are. That's the secret every consistent person knows. You can't control how you feel, but you can control what you do next. And what you do next shapes everything. So stop worshiping motivation like it's the key to success. It's not. It's just the match that lights the fire, and matches burn out. What keeps the fire alive is discipline. What keeps the flame steady is commitment. Every day you choose to move forward without waiting for the right mood, you train yourself to become unstoppable. You no longer need the perfect playlist, the perfect moment, or the perfect mindset. You just move. And movement repeated enough becomes your new normal. So when you wake up tomorrow and that voice whispers, "Not today, you're tired, you don't feel like it," don't argue, don't negotiate. Just move. Start walking, start typing, start cleaning, start doing. The feeling will follow the action. Because the truth is simple. Motivation is a myth. Action is the cure. And the people who win in life aren't the ones who feel the most inspired, they're the ones who act the most consistently. Action creates emotion. There's a common belief that feelings come first, that you must feel ready before you act, feel confident before you begin, feel motivated before you move. But that belief is backward. Emotion doesn't create action. Action creates emotion. The way you feel is often the result of what you do, not the reason you do it. Think about the last time you didn't want to do something. Maybe it was getting out of bed early, working out, or facing a difficult task. You delayed it, told yourself, "I'll start when I feel like it." But the longer you waited, the heavier it felt. Then, finally, you started. You didn't want to, but you did. And what happened? Within minutes, the resistance began to fade. The energy appeared. The task no longer seemed impossible. That shift wasn't magic. It was biology. Your brain responds to motion, not intention. When you move, your mind releases chemicals that change how you feel. Dopamine rises with progress. Endorphins lift your mood. The act of starting creates the very energy you were waiting for. This is why high performers don't rely on motivation. They rely on momentum. They know that waiting for the right feeling is emotional quicksand. The longer you wait, the deeper you sink. The only way out is movement. Action breaks the cycle of hesitation. It cuts through fear, overthinking, and doubt. When you take one small step, your brain receives proof that you are in control. That proof generates confidence, and confidence generates emotion. One single act of motion can shift an entire state of mind. We often underestimate how powerful small actions are. You think you need a big change, a total transformation, but often one tiny movement can unlock everything. Make the bed, open the laptop, go for a 5-minute walk, reply to one message you've been avoiding. These are small wins, but small wins compound. They whisper to your brain, "I'm not stuck, I'm capable." And that whisper grows louder each time you act, because every action, no matter how small, is a vote for the person you're becoming. There's a reason people feel better after cleaning their room, organizing their desk, or completing something simple. It's not the task itself that matters, it's the movement, the momentum, the psychological signal that says, "I'm moving forward." Inaction, on the other hand, feeds anxiety. The longer you sit, think, and delay, the heavier the task becomes in your mind. You begin to imagine failure before you even begin. Action interrupts that spiral. You can't think your way out of fear. You can only move your way through it. The truth is, emotion follows attention. When your attention is stuck on what might go wrong, your emotion becomes fear. When your attention shifts to what you're doing right now, to the action, fear dissolves. You return to the present moment where power actually exists. And that's what action does. It pulls you out of your head and into reality. Thinking creates distance. Acting creates connection. You reconnect with life, with your body, with the moment. And that connection breeds clarity. The most successful people aren't always the smartest or most inspired. They're simply the ones who understand that movement changes mood. They use action as a switch. Feeling low? Move. Feeling lost? Do something simple. Feeling overwhelmed? Start small. They know that clarity comes from doing, not from thinking. You can't think your way into better emotions. You must behave your way into them. You might say, "But I'm not ready yet." Of course you're not. No one ever feels ready for the thing that changes them. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It's a result. You become ready through action, not before it. Every confident person you've ever met, every athlete, speaker, leader, once felt unprepared. The only difference is they moved anyway. They learned that courage is not a feeling, it's a behavior. Courage is the decision to move forward even while afraid. Fear doesn't disappear before action, it dissolves because of action. Think of emotion like water in a still pond. When nothing moves, the surface becomes stagnant, dust collects, clarity fades. But the moment you toss a stone, the moment you act, ripples form, energy returns, the water stirs, clears, and flows again. That's how your mind works. When you stay still, your emotions stagnate. When you move, they change. Action is movement, physical, mental, emotional, and movement always creates life. There's another reason action matters so much. It rewrites the story you tell yourself. If you sit in hesitation long enough, your inner voice starts saying, "I can't." You begin to believe you're lazy, unmotivated, or broken. But the moment you act, even slightly, you give your brain new evidence. You prove that the story was false. And the next time resistance shows up, it's a little weaker. You've built a counter memory. I've done hard things before. That's how confidence is built, not from affirmations, but from action-based proof. This is why progress feels good. Your brain isn't addicted to finishing, it's addicted to advancing. Every step forward triggers reward signals. Every box checked, every small win completed tells your system, "I'm alive, I'm effective, I'm in motion." That's why the most disciplined people often look peaceful. They're not forcing themselves anymore, they're feeding their chemistry with movement. Action becomes self-sustaining. But let's be honest, there's a gap between knowing this and living it. You already know that starting helps. You felt it before. So why do you still wait sometimes? Because your brain loves comfort, even when comfort hurts. The mind associates stillness with safety. When you move towards something uncomfortable, like a goal, a task, or a risk, your brain triggers resistance. It whispers, "Stay still. Think about it first. Wait." That's your survival instinct. But survival mode doesn't build greatness. It builds average. The only way to reprogram that instinct is to act while it protests. Each time you act through hesitation, you teach your brain that movement is safe, even powerful. Eventually, what once felt like fear becomes fuel. Action is not just something you do, it's something you become. It reshapes your identity. You stop identifying as someone who wants to improve and start identifying as someone who takes action. That identity shift changes everything, because once action becomes part of who you are, hesitation loses its voice. You no longer argue with yourself, you just begin. That's the real transformation, when effort becomes instinct. And that's why you must start before you feel ready. Every movement, every small push, every uncomfortable step sends a message to your mind. I move first, feelings follow me. This mindset separates the disciplined from the distracted. While most people chase the feeling of readiness, you'll create it. While others wait for motivation, you'll manufacture it. And that creation, that power to generate emotion through action, is one of the highest forms of self-mastery. Remember this, the hardest part is never the work itself, it's the start. Once you start, gravity shifts, momentum takes over, and what felt impossible starts to feel natural. So when you wake up tomorrow and your mind says, "I don't feel like it," smile. You don't need to feel like it. You just need to move. Do one small thing. Send one message. Take one step. And watch what happens next. Because motion unlocks emotion. And emotion fuels motion. It's a cycle. But you control where it begins. So stop waiting for inspiration. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Start. And let the energy come after. Act first, feel later. That's how you build momentum. That's how you create motivation. That's how you improve, one deliberate step at a time. Commit, then execute. There's a quiet power in commitment, the kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't boast, doesn't ask for applause. It's the energy of someone who's already decided, someone who doesn't wake up each day wondering if they'll take action, but only how they'll take it. When you commit, you remove the question. And when the question is gone, energy flows. Because indecision drains strength, hesitation wastes days. But a clear commitment simplifies everything. Once you decide, the path ahead may not be easy, but it's no longer confusing. You've already answered the hardest question: will I do this? Everything after that is just execution. The truth is, most people never commit. They consider, they plan, they prepare, but they don't decide. They treat their goals like wishes, leaving space for an escape route when things get difficult. They say, "I'll try," instead of "I will." But trying isn't a strategy, it's hesitation disguised as effort. When you truly commit, you stop negotiating. There's no plan B, there's only forward. And that's when something shifts. Your brain stops looking for shortcuts and starts looking for solutions. You begin to move with conviction instead of convenience. Commitment is not about emotion. It's not about feeling confident or prepared. It's about making a promise to yourself that doesn't depend on how you feel tomorrow. Because emotions are weather. They change every day. Commitment is climate. It stays the same no matter the season. When you commit, you become the anchor in your own storm. You act not because you're certain, but because you've decided that quitting isn't an option. That decision rewires you. It turns effort into identity. Think of how many dreams die in the space between wanting and deciding. Everyone wants to improve. Everyone wants to grow, but few are willing to remove the exit door. Commitment means burning the bridge back to comfort. It means stepping into uncertainty with no guarantee and trusting that you'll figure it out as you go. You don't need to know every step before you start. You just need to know your direction and refuse to stop walking. Because clarity doesn't come from standing still. Clarity comes from motion, from feedback, from doing. You can't think your way to perfect preparation, but you can act your way to progress. Commitment creates momentum because it eliminates distraction. When you're half in, everything feels heavy. Every obstacle looks like a reason to stop. But when you're all in, those same obstacles become challenges to overcome. The difference isn't in the world, it's in your decision. A committed person doesn't ask, "Can I?" They ask, "How will I?" They know they'll make mistakes. They know they will fail. But failure is no longer fatal. It's just part of the process. When you commit, you give yourself permission to fail forward. You stop chasing perfection and start chasing persistence. Execution is where commitment becomes real. It's where your promises meet your behavior. Anyone can commit with words, but execution, showing up again and again, especially when it's inconvenient, that's the true measure of growth. Execution is quiet. It's unglamorous. It's late nights, early mornings, and uncomfortable repetitions. It's doing what needs to be done when no one is watching. That's why so few master it, because execution requires humility. It asks you to trade excitement for endurance. You don't need grand motivation to execute. You just need a system that keeps you consistent. Write it down, schedule it, set it in motion. Then stop asking if you feel like it, just follow the plan. The mind loves to overthink what's already been decided. It looks for loopholes. It wants to renegotiate. But when you've committed, your only job is to execute. That's how elite performers think. They don't wait for clarity, they create it through action. They don't crave ease, they crave consistency. And once they commit, they remove emotion from the equation. They execute even when it's boring, especially when it's boring, because boredom is where mastery is built. Execution is what transforms dreams into results. It's not the idea that matters, it's the follow-through. The world isn't changed by people who talk about potential. It's changed by people who do something with it. Every plan eventually reaches the point where talking must end and doing must begin. That's where 99% of people stop, at the edge of discomfort. But the 1% who step forward build momentum that carries them for years. They act not because they have guarantees, but because they understand this truth. Execution is clarity. You don't need to see the entire staircase to climb the first step. You just need to move. Execution also builds trust, not with others, but with yourself. Every time you follow through, you send a signal to your mind, I keep my promises. That self-trust is the foundation of confidence, because confidence isn't built from compliments, it's built from consistency. You can't respect yourself if you constantly break your own word, and you can't improve if you only act when it's easy. But when you execute daily, even when it's inconvenient, you start believing in your own reliability, and belief turns discipline into instinct. Commitment without execution is just a wish. Execution without commitment is short-lived. But when you combine both, when you decide, then do, progress becomes inevitable. Because commitment gives direction and execution gives movement. Together, they create transformation. This is how every great journey begins. Decide, then act. No perfect moment, no guarantee. Just a decision followed by movement. That's how confidence is built, skill is developed, and success is earned one executed decision at a time. So how do you strengthen commitment and execution in your own life? Start small, but mean it. Don't commit to everything, commit to something. Something you can measure, something you can track, something you can finish. Then, every single day, execute one step towards it. Even if it's only for 5 minutes, even if you're tired, even if no one notices. That's how habits form. That's how identity changes. That's how ordinary people become unstoppable. You'll never rise higher than your level of execution. And you'll never execute consistently without commitment. The combination of the two is what builds quiet power, the kind of strength that doesn't depend on motivation or recognition. So stop half-deciding. Stop testing the water with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Jump in. Fully. Then move. Execute. You'll figure the rest out on the way. Because improvement doesn't come from endless thinking. It comes from decisive doing. You don't need to see the entire plan, you just need to trust that action will reveal the next step. Commit first. Execute second. That's how progress is made. That's how discipline is born. That's how you force yourself to improve. Not through waiting, not through wishing, but through doing. Brutal honesty with yourself. Growth begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. It begins the moment you face the mirror and tell the truth, not the version that makes you comfortable, but the version that hurts a little. Because improvement isn't just about effort, it's about awareness. And awareness requires honesty. Brutal, unfiltered honesty. You can't fix what you refuse to face. You can't grow from what you keep defending. Until you admit the real reasons you're stuck, no amount of motivation, strategy, or discipline will move you forward. We all tell ourselves stories, small, quiet lies that make stagnation easier to live with. We say things like, I don't have time. I'm waiting for the right moment. I'll start when things settle down. But the truth hiding beneath those words is usually simpler. You don't want to feel uncomfortable. You're not out of time. You're avoiding effort. You're not waiting for clarity. You're avoiding accountability. You're not unmotivated. You're untruthful about your priorities. And as harsh as that sounds, facing it is freedom, because honesty gives you control. When you stop blaming external conditions, you finally regain the power to change internal ones. Brutal honesty doesn't mean self-hatred. It means self-awareness. It's not about shaming yourself. It's about seeing yourself clearly. When you tell yourself the truth, you strip away illusion. You see where your energy leaks, where your excuses live, where your intentions and actions no longer align. And that clarity hurts, but it's the kind of pain that purifies. The truth doesn't destroy you. It deletes the illusions that keep you small. Most people live in denial not because they're weak, but because it's easier. It's easier to say, "I'm fine," than to admit you're stuck. It's easier to say, "I'll start soon," than confront why you haven't started. Denial protects your ego, but it poisons your growth. Every small lie you tell yourself becomes a wall between who you are and who you could be. You can decorate that wall with positive affirmations, but it's still blocking your path. Only the truth breaks it down. So here's the question you must ask yourself. What am I pretending not to know? You already know the habits that are slowing you down. You already know the distractions you choose. You already know when you're wasting time and calling it rest. But pretending not to know keeps you comfortable, and comfort kills change. Improvement begins when you say, "I'm done lying to myself." Because the moment you admit the truth, you gain clarity, and clarity creates direction. You can't build discipline on deception. You can't claim to want success while practicing the habits of avoidance. If you say you value health but constantly neglect your body, that's a lie. If you say you value growth but spend every spare hour scrolling, that's a lie. If you say you value peace but keep choosing chaos, that's a lie. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're human. But being human is not an excuse to remain unconscious. Your life improves the day your actions begin to match your words. And that alignment starts with honesty. Brutal honesty sounds harsh because we've been trained to avoid discomfort. We crave validation, not truth. We want to feel good about ourselves, not face what needs fixing. But validation without improvement is empty. It soothes the ego while the soul stays stagnant. You don't need more comfort, you need more clarity. And clarity is forged in confrontation, the quiet, private confrontation between who you are and who you know you should be. Sit with yourself. Ask the uncomfortable questions. What am I avoiding right now? What am I pretending is fine? Where am I breaking promises to myself? What story am I using to justify my inaction? Write it down. Look at it in plain words. Don't dress it up. Don't soften it. Just see it. That's what honesty does. It exposes the hidden patterns. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. And that awareness forces a choice: change or continue lying. Either way, you can no longer claim ignorance. When you live dishonestly, life becomes confusing. You feel exhausted but can't explain why. You feel guilty but don't know for what. That's because your soul is carrying the weight of contradiction, saying one thing, doing another. And deep down, you know it. Honesty lifts that weight. It brings peace, not the easy kind that comes from escape, but the deep kind that comes from integrity. When your actions reflect your truth, life feels lighter, even when it's hard. But brutal honesty also means accepting responsibility. No more blaming circumstances, luck, or other people. Yes, life can be unfair. Yes, you may have been hurt. Yes, you may have started behind. But none of that excuses staying where you are. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can always control what you do next. That's the difference between victims of circumstance and masters of growth. One waits for change, the other creates it. Being honest also means recognizing patterns of self-betrayal, the small ways you let yourself down daily, the snoozed alarm, the skipped workout, the project you said you'd start but didn't. Each moment of avoidance chips away at self-respect, and every time you keep a promise to yourself, you rebuild it. That's why honesty is the foundation of discipline, because without truth, every promise becomes optional. You might think being brutally honest will make you feel worse, but the opposite is true. Yes, it stings at first, like disinfecting a wound, but afterwards you feel clean, clear, free. You stop needing to defend yourself. You stop pretending. You stop wasting energy maintaining a false image. And that energy becomes available for growth. Honesty simplifies life. It removes drama. It replaces confusion with direction. Because when you stop lying, you stop hiding. And when you stop hiding, you can finally build. The most dangerous lies are not the ones you tell others. They're the ones you whisper to yourself in silence. It's okay. I'll do it tomorrow. This isn't really a big deal. Everyone else is doing the same. Each of those lies buys you comfort today, but costs you confidence tomorrow. And confidence, once lost, takes time to rebuild. The good news? Honesty rebuilds it faster than anything else. Every time you tell yourself the truth, even when it's hard, you prove that you're strong enough to face reality. That courage compounds. It becomes your new baseline. So make honesty a daily ritual. At the end of each day, ask yourself 3 questions. Did I keep the promises I made to myself today? Did I face what I've been avoiding? Did I act in alignment with who I say I want to be? If the answer is no, don't judge yourself. Adjust yourself. That's the real purpose of honesty, not punishment, but alignment. To close the gap between intention and action. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stop pretending that imperfection doesn't matter. Because every small truth told today prevents a much bigger lie tomorrow. And over time, those truths compound into self-respect, clarity, and peace. Brutal honesty is the gatekeeper of improvement. It's the doorway you must walk through to build anything meaningful. It's uncomfortable, yes, but so is every form of growth. Discipline without honesty becomes denial. Motivation without honesty becomes fantasy. Only truth keeps both grounded. So today, look at yourself without filters. Acknowledge the habits that drain you. Admit the distractions that own you. And confront the excuses that disguise themselves as logic. You'll feel exposed at first, vulnerable, maybe even embarrassed. But underneath that discomfort lies freedom. The freedom to change. Fix your environment.
Improvement is not just about willpower. It's about the world you live in, the space that surrounds you, the people you keep near, and the systems you quietly build. Because no matter how strong your discipline, your environment eventually shapes your direction. You can't grow in a place that constantly pulls you backward. You can't focus in chaos. You can't rise while surrounded by the same noise that kept you distracted. If you want to change your life, you must first fix your environment. Every environment tells a story. Your room, your workspace, your phone, they all reflect your habits. Look around right now. Is your space supporting your growth or silently sabotaging it? Clutter is not just physical, it's emotional. A messy desk creates a messy mind. A chaotic digital life mirrors a chaotic focus. When your surroundings are full of noise, it becomes harder to hear yourself think. And self-improvement begins with clarity. So before you chase new goals, clean the space that holds you. Start simple. Organize the room where you spend most of your time. Put things back where they belong. Throw away what no longer serves a purpose. This isn't about being neat for appearance. It's about signaling to your brain that you are in control. That small order creates calm, and that calm becomes energy. Every object in your space either drains or supports you. Each one tells your mind something about what matters. When everything around you feels intentional, your focus naturally deepens. Then move to your digital world. Your phone is not just a tool, it's a doorway. And too often, that doorway leads you away from who you want to be. Uninstall the apps that pull you into endless scrolling. Clean your desktop. Organize your files. Clear your inbox. When you simplify your digital life, you create mental space for real thought. Because clutter online becomes clutter in your head, invisible but heavy. Your mind can only create freely when it isn't buried under notifications and noise. Next, examine your routines, your behavioral environment. Every day, your habits are shaped by triggers. The place where you keep your phone, the chair where you sit to work, the music you play in the background. If your environment constantly reminds you of old habits, you'll keep repeating them even if you've outgrown them. So design your surroundings to make good choices easier. If you want to read more, leave a book where your phone usually rests. If you want to exercise, set out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to wake up early, move your alarm far enough away that you have to stand to silence it. You don't need more discipline, you need fewer distractions. Your environment can be your greatest ally or your greatest enemy. When it's built intentionally, it carries you forward. When it's left unmanaged, it quietly holds you back. Every successful person understands this. They don't rely on willpower alone. They engineer their surroundings to make progress automatic. They know that willpower is finite, but design is permanent. So they build systems that remove temptation before it even appears. If you're constantly fighting against your environment, you'll always feel drained. But if you align it with your goals, progress feels natural, almost effortless. There's also the social environment, the people you let influence your thoughts. We like to believe we're independent, but we're not. The tone of your life often mirrors the tone of the voices around you. If you're surrounded by complainers, you start to complain. If you're surrounded by dreamers, you start to dream. If you're surrounded by disciplined people, you start to act. You absorb energy through proximity. That's why you must choose carefully. Be around people who live the values you're trying to grow into, not just those who talk about them. If someone drains your energy every time you meet, that's not connection. That's corrosion. You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to protect your focus. Remember, you can't soar while clinging to anchors. Your physical and social environments feed your emotional one. If you're always in messy spaces surrounded by chaos, your mind begins to normalize stress. It starts to believe that confusion is comfort. But once you experience order, peace starts to feel powerful. You crave it. You protect it. That's how environmental change works. Once you taste clarity, you stop settling for clutter. Fixing your environment also means managing inputs, what you watch, read, and listen to. Everything you consume becomes part of your mental diet. If your feed is full of outrage, gossip, and comparison, your thoughts will reflect that chaos. But if you fill your world with ideas that challenge and uplift you, your focus sharpens and your standards rise. Guard your attention like your most precious resource, because it is. Your focus determines your direction, and your direction determines your destiny. You can't expect a peaceful mind while feeding it constant noise. Sometimes fixing your environment means saying no to distractions, to toxic habits, even to familiar routines that no longer serve your growth. Growth always costs comfort, and comfort often hides inside the spaces you've outgrown. Maybe it's the friend who keeps you small. Maybe it's the routine that no longer challenges you. Maybe it's the workspace that reminds you of your old limits. Letting go feels lonely at first, but that loneliness is space clearing for something new. When you protect your environment, you protect your energy, and your energy is the foundation of everything you build. Here's something most people don't realize. Your environment doesn't just reflect your mindset, it creates it. A clean space builds pride. An ordered schedule builds trust. A focused routine builds confidence. When your surroundings are disciplined, your thoughts follow. And when your environment supports your purpose, discipline feels less like a battle and more like alignment. So take time to audit your environment today. Look at your space. Does it calm you or distract you? Look at your circle. Do they encourage you or drain you? Look at your routines. Do they move you forward or hold you still? Write it down. Be honest. Then begin changing one small thing at a time. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. Progress is built on micro-adjustments that accumulate into transformation. Start by cleaning one area. Fix one corner. Organize one drawer. Then move outward. Each small act of order builds self-respect. Each small improvement sends the message, I care about the space I'm growing in. When your environment is aligned with your goals, improvement stops feeling forced. It becomes a rhythm, a flow. You no longer need to fight distractions because they no longer live where you do. You wake up in clarity, move with purpose, and rest without guilt. That's the power of fixing your environment. It frees your mental energy for what truly matters. But remember, your environment is not just a place. It's a reflection of the standards you hold for yourself. If you allow disorder around you, it's often because you've accepted it within you. And when you raise your internal standards, your external world begins to shift to match. This is the silent truth of transformation. Change your space, and your habits follow. Change your habits, and your identity follows. You're not just cleaning your room, you're cleaning your future. So fix your environment, not because you want perfection, but because you want peace. Make your surroundings an ally to your discipline, not a threat to it. Simplify, organize, design your world for growth. When you do, progress becomes easier, not because life got lighter, but because you removed the weight that never belonged there. Your environment can either feed your excuses or fuel your evolution. Choose the one that serves your higher self. Surround yourself with order, energy, and purpose. Create a space that reminds you daily you are in control. You are becoming more. Because when your world supports your focus, improvement stops being a struggle.
Stop negotiating with weakness. Every day, a silent conversation takes place inside your mind. It begins the moment you wake up. One voice says, "Get up, let's go." The other whispers, "Just 5 more minutes." One voice says, "Do the work now." The other replies, "I'll do it later." You already know which voice wins most of the time. The problem isn't that you can't hear the strong one. It's that you keep negotiating with the weak one. And every time you negotiate, you lose a little bit of power. Weakness doesn't shout. It bargains. It sounds reasonable, even kind. It says things like, "You've done enough today," or "You deserve a break," or "You can start fresh tomorrow." It's comforting. It sounds harmless. But make no mistake, weakness is a master manipulator. Its goal isn't to destroy you in one moment. Its goal is to drain you slowly, one excuse, one delay, one skipped promise at a time. And every time you negotiate, it gets stronger. You don't lose discipline overnight. You lose it through negotiation, through the hundreds of small moments where you choose comfort over commitment. Each compromise feels small, but they add up. They form habits, habits of avoidance, procrastination, and guilt. And eventually, those habits define your life. To stop negotiating with weakness, you first have to recognize how subtle it is. It doesn't always sound lazy, sometimes it sounds logical. You should rest so you can work better tomorrow. You need to be kind to yourself. It's okay, everyone skips sometimes. Those phrases are true in moderation, but weakness twists them into permission to stop trying. It disguises indulgence as self-care. It uses kindness as camouflage for avoidance. But real self-care isn't about giving yourself what feels good now. It's about giving yourself what will make you stronger later. The people who consistently grow aren't the ones who never hear the voice of weakness. They're the ones who refuse to negotiate with it. They hear the whisper too. They feel the temptation to rest, delay, and escape. But instead of arguing, they act. They move before the mind can reply. They understand that hesitation feeds the wrong voice. The longer you think about whether to act, the louder weakness becomes. So don't debate. Don't justify. Just move. Because action silences doubt faster than thought ever can. Weakness thrives in indecision. It grows in the gap between intention and action. Every second you spend thinking about what to do next gives it more time to talk you out of it. That's why decisive people seem so powerful, not because they never feel resistance, but because they don't let resistance negotiate. They make a choice, and they move. End of story. They know that hesitation drains more energy than work ever will. When you negotiate with weakness, you build a habit of hesitation. But when you act decisively, you build a habit of power. Every decision trains your identity. Every time you choose the harder path, you strengthen the muscle of discipline.
And every time you choose the easier one, you strengthen the habit of avoidance. You're always training something. The only question is, what? Weakness is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It shows you where your limits live. It points directly at the places where your self-control is weakest. That's where growth is found, in the confrontation. So instead of fearing weakness, face it. When that inner voice says, skip today, use it as a signal, this is where I'm supposed to push. Don't suppress the feeling, override it with action. Because every time you act against it, it loses power. And one day that voice that used to control you becomes a faint echo in the background, still there, but powerless. The truth is, weakness never disappears completely. It lives inside all of us. It's the part that craves comfort, familiarity, and ease. You can't kill it, but you can starve it. And you starve it by refusing to feed it with attention. You starve it by moving when it wants you still, by finishing when it wants you to quit, by choosing the hard thing even when no one's watching. Each time you do that, you prove that you are in control, not the voice. You'll know you've stopped negotiating when you no longer waste time explaining your actions to yourself. You don't argue with yourself about getting up early. You just get up. You don't debate whether to go to the gym. You're already on the way. You don't discuss the pros and cons of working. You open the file and begin typing. That's what real discipline looks like. Quiet decisiveness. No drama, no debate, no delay. Weakness loves emotion. It feeds on how you feel. It will use fatigue, boredom, sadness, anything as an excuse to pull you away from what matters. But emotion is temporary. Purpose is permanent. When you stop giving your emotions the final vote, you start leading your life instead of reacting to it. You can feel tired and still act. You can feel afraid and still move. You can feel unmotivated and still execute. That's strength. Not the absence of weakness, but the refusal to obey it. You must learn to separate what's true from what's useful. The truth might be that you're tired, but what's useful is to finish what you started. The truth might be that you're anxious, but what's useful is to act despite it. The truth might be that you don't feel like it, but what's useful is to move anyway. Your feelings are valid, but they don't have authority. Weakness wants you to believe that your emotions define your limits. Strength knows they only define your starting point. You've probably heard the phrase, discipline equals freedom. Here's why it's true. When you stop negotiating with weakness, your life gets simpler. No more wasted hours deciding what to do. No more guilt over broken promises. No more internal battles between comfort and growth. You just move. You just do. And that simplicity is peace, the kind of peace that comes from alignment. You know who you are because you act like who you are. Stopping the negotiation also means learning to embrace discomfort. Weakness thrives in avoidance. It wants you to run from pain, from challenge, from effort. But strength sees discomfort differently, as proof of progress. If you're uncomfortable, you're growing. If it's hard, it's working. That's the mental shift that ends negotiation. Pain stops being a reason to stop and becomes a reason to continue, because the person you want to be lives on the other side of that discomfort. Don't confuse compassion with indulgence. Being kind to yourself doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook every time it's hard. True self-respect comes from doing what's right for you, not what's easy for you. Weakness seeks relief. Strength seeks results. And the path to results is paved with repetition, discomfort, and persistence. You'll never silence the voice of weakness entirely, but you can train yourself to act faster than it can speak. Create rules that remove negotiation. I don't skip twice in a row. I never hit snooze. I start before I think. These are not restrictions, they're freedoms. They free you from the exhausting cycle of debate and delay. Because once the rule exists, the decision is already made. And once the decision is made, discipline becomes effortless. Weakness is clever.
Control your time. Time is the most democratic resource in the world. Everyone gets the same 24 hours each day, no more, no less. But what separates the disciplined from the distracted isn't the amount of time they have, it's how they use it. You can't control the clock, but you can control your calendar. You can't stop time from passing, but you can decide how much of it passes with purpose. And that choice, how you spend your hours, will quietly decide the quality of your entire life. People often say, "I don't have time." But what they really mean is, I've chosen to give my time to something else. Because time is never truly missing, it's always being traded. You trade hours for habits, you trade minutes for distractions, you trade focus for noise. So when you say, "I don't have time to improve," what you're really saying is, I've given my time to things that don't move me forward. That realization can sting, but it's also empowering. Because if your time is yours to waste, then it's also yours to reclaim. Control doesn't mean rigidity, it means awareness. It means knowing where your hours go before they disappear. Imagine every day as a bank account of time. You wake up with 86,400 seconds. You can invest them, waste them, or spend them carelessly. But at midnight, the account resets. The time you didn't use well is gone forever. When you think about time as a currency, you become more intentional. You stop spending it on things that bring no return. The people who master their time don't work harder, they just stop giving energy to things that drain it. The first step to controlling your time is tracking it honestly. Not through guesswork, through evidence. Write down how you actually spend your hours, not how you wish you spent them. Most people think they work 8 hours and rest for 2, when the truth is they work 4 and drift for 6. They mistake motion for progress, scrolling for research, multitasking for productivity. Brutal honesty about your time is uncomfortable, but it's the key to reclaiming it. Because once you see where your hours go, you can redirect them. The next step is to define your non-negotiables. These are the actions that move you toward who you want to become. They deserve protected time, time that cannot be bargained with, delayed, or stolen. Schedule them like appointments with yourself, because that's what they are. And then treat them with the same respect you'd give a meeting with someone important, because you are someone important. When you protect your non-negotiables, you start sending yourself a powerful message. My time matters. My growth matters. Time leaks through small cracks. The 5 minutes of social media here, the endless just one more video there. Individually, they seem harmless. Together, they steal years. You can't eliminate every distraction, but you can design your day to minimize temptation. Keep your phone away while you work. Turn off notifications that don't serve your goals.
Set specific hours for deep focus and treat them as sacred, because the world will always find ways to interrupt you, but only you can decide whether it succeeds. The disciplined don't have more time, they have fewer interruptions. They create boundaries around their focus. They understand that saying yes to one thing always means saying no to something else, so they choose carefully. They don't fill their calendar to look busy, they protect it to stay effective. Being busy is not the same as being productive. Busyness is motion, productivity is progress. When you learn to separate the two, you begin to reclaim hours you never realized you had. Time management is not about squeezing more into your day, it's about doing less better. You can't master your life until you master your attention. And attention is just another word for where your time goes. So focus on fewer things. Do them deeply. Finish them fully. It's better to complete one meaningful task each day than to scatter your energy across 10 half-finished ones. Because success doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing what matters most consistently. Another truth about time: you will never find it. You must make it. The people who say, "I'll do it when I have time," are really saying, "I'll never do it." Because time doesn't appear. It's carved out by discipline. Wake up earlier. Plan your day before it starts. Batch similar tasks together to protect focus. Learn to say no, gracefully but firmly. Every no to distraction is a yes to growth. Every small boundary is an act of self-respect. There's also a mental trap hidden in time, the illusion of later. You think you'll have more energy later, more motivation later, more clarity later. But later is just another name for never. If something matters, it deserves action now. Not perfect action, just movement. Time doesn't reward intention, it rewards execution. Each day you delay what matters, you teach your brain that procrastination is acceptable, and soon delay becomes identity. So reverse it. Teach your brain that action is immediate. Act now, adjust later. Controlling your time also means controlling your mornings. The way you begin the day sets the tone for everything that follows. Start with silence. Plan your priorities. Move your body. Feed your mind. If you win the morning, you often win the day. Not because the morning is magical, but because it's the one part of the day you can fully control before the world wakes up. Protect it. Treat it as sacred time. But just as you must protect your mornings, you must also guard your nights. Stop filling your evenings with noise and escape. Use them for reflection, learning, or preparation. Ask yourself, what did I build today? What will I do differently tomorrow? That simple reflection keeps your days connected. It prevents you from drifting through life unaware. Because wasted time doesn't feel wasted when you're unaware. It just quietly disappears. Awareness turns every hour into an opportunity. Still, controlling time isn't about perfection. You'll fall behind sometimes. You'll lose focus. That's normal. The goal isn't to live like a machine. It's to live intentionally. To notice when you've drifted and bring yourself back with kindness but firmness. Discipline is not punishment, it's protection. It protects your limited hours from being stolen by things that don't matter. And when you live that way, your days begin to expand. Not literally, but in depth, in meaning, in peace. Because time well used always feels longer. Your relationship with time reflects your relationship with yourself. If you constantly waste it, it's because you haven't fully valued your potential yet. But as you grow in self-respect, you naturally grow in time respect. You stop seeing each day as something to get through and start seeing it as something to build with. Every hour becomes a chance to shape your story. Every decision becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of your future. You're not managing time, you're creating your life. The truth is, you already have enough time to improve. You've just been letting others spend it for you. The notifications, the obligations, the endless consumption that disguises itself as connection. But once you start guarding your time like your most valuable asset, because it is, everything changes. You think clearer, you move slower but more purposefully. You feel less busy and more alive. Because control isn't about speed, it's about direction. So starting today, take control of your time. Audit it, simplify it, design it. Wake with intention, work with focus, rest with purpose. And remember, the clock is not your enemy. It's your reminder that life is happening now. You can't pause it. You can't rewind it. You can only decide what to do with it while it's still yours. Control your time and you control your results. Control your results and you control your destiny. Because success isn't built in years, it's built in hours. And every hour well used is proof that you're becoming the kind of person who doesn't wait for change, you create it. That's how you force yourself to improve, one intentional hour at a time.
The momentum principle. Momentum is the quiet force that makes progress feel natural. It's the invisible rhythm that carries you forward when motivation fades and discipline feels heavy. It's not speed, it's continuity. It's the power that builds when you simply refuse to stop. The truth is, most people never stay in motion long enough to experience the full power of momentum. They start, stop, restart, and stop again, each time losing the energy they worked so hard to build. Improvement isn't about massive effort once, it's about sustained effort consistently. It's about doing enough, often enough, for long enough, until movement becomes identity. That's the momentum principle. Momentum doesn't happen by accident. It begins with a single push, one small action repeated until it becomes natural. At first, everything feels heavy. You're fighting inertia, resistance, and habit. But then something shifts. Your mind and body begin to align. The friction decreases. The work that once felt forced begins to feel familiar. That's the moment when consistency starts to carry you. You're no longer pushing yourself uphill. The hill is beginning to help you move forward. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity feels good. It's dramatic, emotional, inspiring, but it fades fast. Consistency, though, quiet, compounds over time. If you work hard once in a while, you'll make progress occasionally. If you work steadily every day, you'll make progress continuously. And over time, continuous always beats occasional. That's the difference between those who change and those who only wish to. Not one grand effort, but thousands of small, relentless ones. Momentum is built on repetition, not perfection. You don't need to get it right every day. You just need to show up every day. Even a small step keeps the motion alive. Even a few minutes of effort keeps your identity aligned with action. Because when you stop completely, restarting takes more energy than continuing ever would. That's why one skipped day matters, not because of what you lose in that moment, but because of the message it sends. Stopping is an option. The moment you normalize pause without purpose, momentum begins to die. Think of a train leaving the station. It starts slow, loud, and heavy. Every inch requires power. But once it's moving, once the wheels turn and the track hums, the same engine that struggled to move one car can now pull dozens with ease. That's how your habits work. At first, progress feels slow because you're building friction against years of comfort and delay. But once you've built movement, it carries itself. Momentum turns hard work into habit, and habit into identity. The momentum principle works in reverse, too.
Just as positive actions compound, so do negative ones. Skipping one workout can become skipping a week. Avoiding one task can become avoiding an entire project. Neglecting one commitment can become losing trust in yourself. Momentum doesn't care about direction. It simply multiplies whatever you repeat. So if you're moving in the wrong direction, don't panic. Just stop feeding the motion. Change one small thing. Interrupt the pattern. Momentum may resist the shift at first, but once it turns, it will begin working for you again. People often ask, how do I stay motivated? The real answer is, you don't. You stay moving, because movement creates motivation. Momentum gives you something better than inspiration. It gives you rhythm. You start doing things automatically without debate. The hesitation fades. The discipline becomes effortless. That's when growth accelerates, not because you're working harder, but because you've eliminated resistance. The momentum principle has 3 stages. Stage 1, initiation. This is the hardest part. You're starting from stillness. Everything in your mind screams, not today. The key here is action, not perfection. Do something. Build movement. Stage 2, stabilization. You're in motion now, but it's fragile. Small setbacks can still stop you. This is where most people quit, not because they fail, but because they get bored. Keep the rhythm, even if it feels slow. Stage 3, expansion. The motion now has power. You can increase the pace, add new challenges, take on more without feeling overwhelmed. Momentum starts doing half the work for you. Each stage is natural, but you must earn your way through them with persistence. Momentum also thrives on feedback. When you track your progress, you see evidence of motion, and that proof fuels your drive to continue. Write it down, check it off, reflect on how far you've come. Progress that isn't measured often feels invisible, and invisible progress leads to doubt. So make your wins visible. Celebrate the process, not just the milestones. Even small victories remind your brain, I'm still moving forward. The hardest part of momentum is protecting it during setbacks. There will be days when life interrupts your rhythm, illness, exhaustion, chaos. That's normal. The goal isn't perfection, it's protection. Protect your movement by doing something, no matter how small, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's one task, even if it's just planning the next step. Because as long as you don't stop completely, the rhythm remains alive. You can rebuild speed later, just don't lose direction. Momentum forgives slowness, but it punishes stillness. Momentum also requires belief, not in success, but in process. If you focus only on outcomes, you'll burn out when results are slow. But if you focus on the rhythm itself, the showing up, the doing, the repetition, you'll stay grounded through every delay. Because consistency itself becomes rewarding. You start to feel satisfaction in keeping promises, not in chasing perfection. That's the secret of sustainable improvement. The work stops being something you have to do and becomes something you get to do. Here's something few people understand. Momentum is emotional protection. When you have rhythm, bad days can't destroy you. One mistake doesn't define you. One low point doesn't derail your growth. Because the system keeps moving even when you don't feel like moving. Momentum carries you through doubt, fear, and fatigue, not because you're strong every day, but because you've built something stronger than mood, a pattern. Momentum is self-trust in motion. It's the quiet confidence that says, I'll keep going no matter what. And that trust is priceless. It turns willpower into identity. You stop wondering if you'll follow through. You know you will. You stop fearing failure because failure becomes part of the rhythm, not the end of it. Momentum transforms effort into ease, struggle into flow, but you must protect it fiercely. Distractions kill momentum faster than laziness. Every time you let your attention scatter, you lose traction. Keep your environment clean, your focus narrow, your schedule intentional. Say no more often. And when you say yes, give your full attention. Because the more you protect your flow, the stronger it becomes. Momentum is fragile in the beginning, but unstoppable once mature. Sometimes people think momentum is about never resting. It's not. Rest is part of the rhythm, but it must be intentional rest, not avoidance. Resting with purpose recharges momentum. Resting from fear kills it. So pause when you need to, but don't lose the rhythm of return. End your rest with movement, even small movement, and you'll keep the current alive. Because momentum isn't about constant speed, it's about constant direction. When you finally experience real momentum, life begins to feel different. Days flow, decisions feel lighter. The things that once required force now happen naturally. That's the reward of consistency, not just achievement, but peace. You no longer live in cycles of guilt and restart. You live in motion. And motion is freedom. Remember this. You don't need to be fast. You just need to keep going. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to stay in motion. Because momentum doesn't care about emotion, it only responds to action. Every small move matters. Every repetition counts. Every day of consistency adds invisible speed to your future. So build momentum deliberately. Start small, stay steady. Protect your rhythm like it's your greatest treasure, because it is. Once you have it, everything becomes easier. Not because life is lighter, but because you are stronger. And that strength, that unstoppable motion, is the true mark of someone who has learned the pain of change. Change is not gentle. It doesn't ask for permission, and it doesn't wait for your comfort. It demands something from you. A cost, a sacrifice, a surrender. That cost is pain, not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that reshapes you. Every transformation, physical, emotional, mental, begins with discomfort, because growth and comfort cannot exist in the same space. To evolve, something in you must die. An old habit, an old identity, an old belief that no longer serves you. And that death always hurts. Most people say they want to change, but what they really mean is, I want things to get better without having to feel worse first. But that's not how transformation works. Change is an unraveling. It's the slow dismantling of everything familiar, the things you've outgrown but still cling to. You don't just replace your old life with a new one. You dismantle the walls that kept you safe, brick by brick, until you're exposed, vulnerable, uncertain, raw. That's why most people quit halfway, not because change is impossible, but because it's painful to rebuild yourself while watching the old version crumble. The pain of change isn't punishment. It's proof that progress is real. It's the tension between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the discomfort of growth stretching your limits. Think about muscles. When you train them, they tear. The tearing hurts, but that's how they rebuild stronger. The same principle applies to the mind. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you tear a bit of the old self away. And yes, it stings, but each small tear makes room for strength. The pain is not the enemy. It's the evidence that you're moving forward. But here's the hard truth. Change will ask you to give up things you still like. The habits that soothe you, the routines that make you feel safe, the people who keep you comfortable in your current identity. Growth will expose the parts of your life that no longer fit, and it will hurt to let them go because familiarity is addictive. You'll find yourself mourning things that once made you happy, even though they no longer help you grow. That grief is part of the process. It's not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're finally doing it right. The pain of change is often silent. It shows up in small moments, waking earlier than you want, saying no when you'd rather say yes, staying disciplined when you'd rather drift. No one applauds you for it, no one sees it. But inside, you know you're fighting something real. And that quiet struggle, that unseen sacrifice, is what separates transformation from intention. Because anyone can wish for improvement, but only those who endure the pain of discipline earn the reward of growth. Pain refines focus. It strips away distractions and forces you to see what truly matters. When things get hard, you begin to notice what's essential and what's noise. You learn which values are real and which were only convenient. In that way, pain is not destruction, it's purification. It burns away the unnecessary so the truth can remain. The truth about who you are, the truth about what you want, the truth about what you're willing to do to get it. You can't avoid the pain of change, but you can choose its direction. There are two kinds of pain: the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. The pain of discipline is temporary, purposeful, cleansing. It's the soreness that comes from doing what's hard now so life feels easier later. The pain of regret is endless. It lingers, festers, and grows heavier with time. You can choose your struggle, but you can't escape one. So choose the pain that leads somewhere. Choose the pain that builds, not the pain that breaks. Change hurts because it breaks patterns your brain has built for survival. Your mind loves predictability. It clings to what's known even when it's miserable, because familiar misery feels safer than unfamiliar growth. So when you start changing, waking earlier than you want, speaking differently, eating better, choosing silence over noise, your brain fights back. It floods you with resistance. It whispers, "This doesn't feel right. Go back." But doesn't feel right doesn't mean isn't right. It just means it's new. The resistance you feel is your old self fighting for survival. Keep going until the new becomes familiar, and that resistance will fade. Many people misunderstand the early pain of change as failure. They assume that if it feels this hard, it must not be meant for them. But that's not true. The pain means you're alive in the process. It means you're confronting your limits. Growth never feels graceful in the beginning. It feels like chaos. It feels like confusion, fatigue, doubt. That's what progress looks like before it looks pretty. You're not falling apart. You're being rebuilt. Change also requires loneliness. Not because you want to be alone, but because evolution often isolates you. When you outgrow your old habits, you outgrow the people who still depend on them. You start speaking a different language, one of purpose, focus, and peace. And not everyone will understand it. You'll have to spend time in solitude, not as punishment, but as preparation. That's where you learn to hear your own voice without the noise of the crowd. That loneliness is sacred. It's where transformation matures in silence. The pain of change is also the pain of self-awareness. The moment you start improving, you begin to see things you used to ignore. You notice your excuses, your procrastination, your emotional triggers. At first, that awareness feels uncomfortable. even embarrassing. But awareness is power, because you can't improve what you won't admit. The sting of self-awareness fades, but the strength it gives you lasts forever. If you expect change to feel easy, you'll quit at the first sign of resistance. But if you accept that pain is part of progress, you'll stop fearing it and start using it. When you feel discomfort, remind yourself this is the sound of growth. This is the body, the mind, and the spirit learning to adapt. Instead of asking, when will this get easier, ask, what is this teaching me? Because every difficult moment contains a lesson about patience, perseverance, or perspective. Pain is not punishment. It's the price of progress. You will face days when you want to go back. Days when the old life looks easier, softer, safer. But remember, comfort was the cage that kept you from flying. Don't let nostalgia trick you into returning to what you prayed to escape. The path of growth is steep, but it leads somewhere beautiful. A life where you trust yourself, respect yourself, and live with quiet strength. That life is worth the pain. The truth is, you can't become who you're meant to be without shedding who you used to be. And shedding hurts. But every version of yourself you outgrow leaves behind a piece of wisdom. The mistakes, the failures, the regrets, they all become the foundation of your new strength. Pain is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a better chapter. One day, you'll look back at the moments that hurt the most and realize they were the ones that changed you the most. You'll see that every tear, every struggle, every lonely night had purpose. The pain that once made you question everything will become the proof that you were strong enough to start over. And you'll smile, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Change will always come with pain, but that pain carries wisdom. It humbles you, sharpens you, and prepares you. You can fight it, or you can embrace it. And if you embrace it, it becomes your teacher, the kind that never flatters, but always transforms. So don't run from the pain of change. Walk through it, slowly, steadily, with faith. Each step you take through discomfort is a step toward the person you're meant to be. And when you emerge on the other side, you'll realize the pain was never your enemy. It was your initiation.
Discipline becomes identity. There comes a moment in every journey of growth when discipline stops feeling like something you do and starts feeling like something you are. A quiet shift happens inside you. What once required effort becomes effortless. What once felt forced begins to feel natural. Discipline becomes identity. That is the highest form of self-mastery, when consistency no longer depends on willpower, but on who you've become. You don't think about it. You don't negotiate with it. You simply live it. At the beginning, discipline feels heavy. It feels like a burden you carry against your own nature, a constant battle between what you want now and what you want most. Every action is deliberate. Every choice feels like resistance training for the mind. But with time, repetition, and patience, something inside you changes. The resistance begins to weaken. The actions become routine. The habits start to flow. You're no longer pushing yourself, you're simply following your rhythm. That's the beauty of true discipline. It starts as effort and ends as instinct. Most people never reach this stage because they stop too soon. They confuse unfamiliar with unsustainable. They say, "This isn't me," when what they really mean is, "This isn't comfortable yet." But everything feels unnatural at first. Confidence, health, focus, consistency.
It takes time for the new self to replace the old one. Discipline is how you bridge that gap. You repeat the actions before you believe in them, until belief grows from behavior. And one day, you realize you're no longer trying to be disciplined, you simply are. The shift begins when your actions and your identity finally align. When you stop saying, "I'm trying to be consistent," and start saying, "I'm the kind of person who shows up." That subtle change in language matters, because identity drives behavior far more powerfully than motivation ever could. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you'll always return to old habits, no matter how much effort you put in. But if you see yourself as the kind of person who does hard things, your behavior naturally follows. You act according to who you believe you are. So if you want to stay consistent, stop chasing habits, start building identity. Identity is not found, it's created. It's built through the small promises you keep to yourself over and over again. Every time you wake up on time, you cast a vote for the identity of a disciplined person. Every time you finish what you start, you reinforce that belief. Every time you act with integrity, you make it more real. Eventually, the votes add up, and your self-image changes. Discipline stops being something external, something you chase, and becomes something internal, something you embody. You don't follow rules anymore, you live by principles. But this transformation requires patience. There's a gap between doing and becoming. In that gap, you'll feel the pull of the old self, the one that seeks comfort, the one that whispers, "You've done enough." That's when you remind yourself discipline is not about perfection, it's about direction. Even when you stumble, your effort still counts. Even when progress feels invisible, your identity is quietly forming. Because consistency isn't measured by flawless days, it's measured by the courage to return after imperfect ones. Discipline as identity also means you no longer see effort as suffering. You see it as alignment. The work you once avoided becomes part of your peace. The challenge you once resisted becomes a source of pride. You begin to crave structure, not chaos. You start finding comfort in accountability instead of escape. You're not forcing yourself anymore, you're following the truth of who you are becoming. And that truth is freedom. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, as the loss of freedom. But in reality, it's the opposite. When you're disciplined, you're no longer controlled by impulses. You're no longer at the mercy of mood or circumstance. You choose your actions with clarity. That's what real freedom feels like. Not doing whatever you want, whenever you want, but being the kind of person who always does what's right even when it's hard. Freedom isn't found in indulgence, it's found in integrity, and integrity is built through discipline. When discipline becomes identity, you also stop needing constant motivation. You don't wake up searching for energy, you wake up searching for execution. You don't rely on external validation, your progress itself becomes your reward. This is when improvement becomes sustainable. You stop falling off track because there's no longer a track to fall off of. You are the track. Your habits have become your baseline. That's why real change feels slower than people expect, because it's not just about behavior. It's about building a new internal compass that points towards excellence automatically. When discipline becomes identity, failure doesn't break you anymore. It simply informs you. You stop seeing setbacks as proof that you're weak and start seeing them as feedback for refinement. You adjust, adapt, and continue calmly. That calmness is a sign of maturity. You've stopped tying your worth to results and started tying it to effort. You no longer need perfection to feel proud, you just need honesty with yourself. That's what identity-based discipline looks like. Quiet confidence rooted in consistency. At this stage, you'll also notice that your standards rise, not because you're chasing more, but because you've grown. You no longer tolerate chaos. You no longer settle for half effort. You begin to expect excellence from yourself naturally. And that expectation doesn't feel heavy, it feels right. You've evolved. You're living in alignment with the person you always wanted to become. When you reach this point, you begin to lead by example, often without realizing it. People around you notice your steadiness, your reliability, your calm presence. They may ask, "How do you stay so disciplined?" And you'll smile, because the truth is, you're not trying to stay disciplined anymore. You just are. Your consistency has become your character. Your effort has become your energy. Your discipline has become your DNA. And that is the quiet reward of years of persistence. You become the proof of what you once only hoped for. But don't mistake identity for arrival. Becoming disciplined doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you've built the foundation to keep evolving forever. Discipline doesn't end, it deepens. It adapts to new goals, new challenges, new levels of life. It becomes the engine that powers every chapter of your future. Once it's part of you, you can take it anywhere. To your work, your relationships, your health, your peace. Because discipline isn't about controlling one part of your life, it's about mastering the way you approach it all. To let discipline become your identity, keep these truths close. Discipline is a dialogue, not a demand. You don't force it, you build it through repetition and respect. Your standards define your self-image. The higher your standards, the clearer your sense of who you are. Discipline is love in action. It's the daily decision to honor your future self even when your present self resists. Momentum sustains identity. Stay in motion. Don't let success make you soft. Your discipline is your legacy. What you practice daily becomes what you're remembered for. The more you practice these truths, the more natural discipline becomes, until one day you stop counting the days altogether. You're no longer trying to keep a streak, you've become the streak. That's when discipline becomes peace. You don't crave shortcuts, validation, or comparison. You simply trust yourself, because you've earned that trust through consistency. And that trust is what real success feels like. Becoming disciplined isn't about becoming rigid or robotic. It's about becoming reliable. Someone you can count on. Someone your future self can thank. You learn that strength isn't in control, it's in commitment. You stop chasing moods and you start building meaning. And when that happens, your life stops revolving around effort, it revolves around excellence. So keep going. Stay consistent. Repeat until repetition becomes identity. Because the ultimate goal of discipline—
You've been waiting for the right moment, waiting for motivation to strike, waiting until you feel like doing the thing you already know you need to do. But here's the truth that few people want to admit. You'll never feel fully ready. Readiness is a story the mind tells to delay the discomfort of growth. It's a comfortable illusion, a gentle whisper that says, "Not today, maybe tomorrow." And tomorrow becomes next week becomes next month. Before you know it, another year slips by and nothing has changed, except the weight of regret pressing harder on your chest. Growth never waits for you to feel inspired. It demands that you move before you feel like moving. The difference between those who improve and those who stay the same isn't luck, talent, or timing.
It's the ability to act while their feelings scream for comfort. Improvement starts the moment you stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" Because feelings lie. They shift with sleep, weather, hunger, and stress. But action tells the truth. Every step you take, no matter how small, rewires your mind to believe, "I am someone who moves, even when I don't feel like it." That belief changes everything. When you start acting without permission from your emotions, you take back control of your life. You stop being a hostage of your moods. You stop needing the perfect morning routine, the right playlist, or the perfect mindset to begin. You just begin. And that's what separates growth from stagnation. The willingness to do the boring, uncomfortable, necessary work without waiting for enthusiasm. You can read all the books, watch every motivational video, and take notes on productivity hacks. But until you take your first uncomfortable step, nothing real changes. Motivation might push you for a moment, but discipline, the quiet decision to move no matter what, is what sustains you through the dull days, the slow progress, and the inner resistance that tries to break you. Because discipline doesn't care how you feel, it only asks one question. Did you do what you said you would do? If you didn't, no excuse matters. If you did, no feeling matters. This is the raw, uncomfortable truth that improvement requires. You must act before you believe, before you're ready, before you feel capable. Action builds belief. Repetition builds readiness. Consistency builds confidence. And over time, the person who forced themselves to act becomes the person who naturally does what others keep avoiding. When you stop waiting to feel ready, you begin to live differently. You realize that hesitation is just fear wearing a polite mask. It's fear disguised as preparation. It tells you, "I just need to think it through," or "I'll start once things calm down." But things rarely calm down, and if they do, something new will take their place. Life doesn't pause for you to prepare. It keeps moving. And if you don't move with it, it leaves you behind. So improvement isn't a decision you make once. It's a daily rebellion against your own comfort. It's waking up and saying, "I don't feel like it, but I'll do it anyway." That phrase, "I'll do it anyway," is the bridge between your current self and your future self. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's the foundation of every transformation. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem focused, sharp, unshakable. You might assume they're always motivated, but they're not. They've just mastered the art of ignoring their feelings long enough to take consistent action. They've learned that readiness is earned, not waited for. You earn readiness by acting while uncertain. You build courage by facing the thing you fear, not by avoiding it until you feel brave. The truth is, every great achievement begins with someone who forced themselves to start before they felt ready. They didn't know if it would work. They didn't have all the answers, but they acted anyway. Because improvement isn't about confidence, it's about courage. And courage doesn't come from clarity, it comes from movement. You don't have to feel inspired to get started, you just need to do the next right thing. Today. Make the call, write the email, clean the space, open the document, show up. That's it. One small, uncomfortable action, multiplied over time, reshapes your identity. Because discipline isn't a trait you're born with, it's a muscle you train every time you act while unmotivated. Every time you force yourself to start, you strengthen that muscle. You become more resilient, more focused, more real. And eventually, the effort that once felt impossible becomes automatic. But here's the hard part. You can't rely on feeling proud after every step. Improvement often feels empty at first, like nothing's happening, because change grows silently. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It shows up weeks later in how you handle stress differently, and how you no longer quit when you're tired, and how you quietly become the person others look to for consistency. That's the hidden reward of forcing yourself to improve. It transforms your identity, not just your habits. You stop chasing quick fixes and start living with quiet power. So here's your challenge. Stop waiting for the right time. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting to feel confident. Act. Feel later. Because the truth is, you are already ready enough to begin. You've just convinced yourself otherwise. Your life will never transform by thinking harder about what to do. It changes when you force yourself to do what you already know matters. Start small, but start now. Clean one corner, finish one task, keep one promise to yourself. Every action, no matter how small, chips away at the version of you that waits, hesitates, and doubts. And with each step, you become the person who doesn't need motivation anymore. You simply act. That's the mindset of growth. That's the truth of improvement. And that's where your transformation begins. Not when you feel ready, but when you finally stop waiting to.
Keep forcing forward. There will always be another challenge, another doubt, another reason to stop. But after everything you've learned, after every moment of discomfort, every repetition, every test of discipline, you now understand something most people never realize. You don't have to feel ready to move. You just have to keep moving. That's the essence of self-improvement. Not perfection, not endless motivation, just forward motion. Deliberate, honest, and consistent. The kind of progress that doesn't shout, doesn't post, doesn't beg for recognition. It simply continues. You've walked through discomfort. You've faced resistance. You've learned to act when you didn't feel like it. You've seen how action creates emotion, how momentum shapes behavior, how discipline becomes identity. You've faced the pain of change and refused to let weakness make the decisions for you. And now here you stand, stronger, quieter, clearer. The noise of excuses no longer carries weight. The pull of comfort no longer feels convincing. You've tasted what progress feels like, and you want more, not from greed, but from gratitude. Because once you experience what it's like to truly move forward, you never want to go back. Improvement is not a single event. It's a continuous choice. Every day, you will be presented with two paths, the one that's easy and the one that's right, the one that soothes you for the moment and the one that strengthens you for life. And the person you become will be shaped by which path you choose, not once, but repeatedly. It's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. Because progress doesn't come from doing everything right. It comes from refusing to quit when things go wrong. You will still have bad days. You'll still face moments where your energy fades, your focus drifts, your confidence cracks. That's part of being human. But now you know what to do with those days. You don't collapse, you correct. You don't panic, you pause. You don't surrender, you start again. You've learned that starting again is not failure, it's resilience. Each restart is another declaration, I'm still in control. And that's what separates you from who you used to be. You don't wait to feel ready anymore. You move anyway. Keep forcing forward, not out of anger or desperation, but out of self-respect. Force doesn't mean violence. It means intention. It means power directed with purpose. To force yourself forward is to choose what matters over what's easy. To keep your word when no one is watching. To do the work not because you must, but because you said you would. That's strength. That's integrity. That's freedom. There will always be people waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect alignment of circumstances. You've outgrown that world. You no longer wait, you act. You know now that discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. And the more you cross it, the more natural it feels. Every time you take one more step, when you didn't want to, when no one saw, when it would have been easier to stop, you're reinforcing the truth. I move forward no matter what.
That truth is unshakable. You've learned that consistency is not glamorous. It's quiet, it's repetitive, it's lonely. But that's where greatness hides, in the invisible work, the repetitions no one claps for, the hours no one notices, the self-corrections no one celebrates. And in that silence, something powerful grows: self-respect. When you can trust yourself to act without applause, you no longer need anyone's approval. You've already earned your own. Remember, the hardest part of improvement is not the work. It's believing that the small things matter. But they do. They always have. The extra 5 minutes of focus, the one more rep, the honest reflection at the end of the day, the quiet choice to begin again instead of giving up. These are the moments that build you, the ones that seem insignificant until they compound into something unstoppable. Because growth doesn't happen in leaps, it happens in layers. You are not who you were when you started. You've changed. Not because you found motivation, but because you built momentum. Not because life got easier, but because you became stronger. And that strength will serve you long after the noise of inspiration fades. You've proven something that can never be taken from you. You are capable of forcing progress, of moving forward through fatigue, fear, and frustration, of shaping your life through choice, not chance. That truth is unshakable. So as you step forward from here, remember this: improvement has no finish line. There's always another version of you waiting, wiser, calmer, sharper, stronger. And the only way to meet that version is to keep moving toward them, one honest step at a time. You don't need to rush. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to continue. Because continuation is power. And every time you move forward, even slightly, you're proving that growth is not something you chase, it's something you create. Keep forcing forward. When it's boring, when it's heavy, when it feels like no one cares, when no one's watching. Keep forcing forward, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Because that's how transformation truly happens, not through inspiration, but through endurance. And one day, you'll look back at everything you've done, every act of discipline, every moment of courage, every repetition that no one noticed, and you'll realize something simple, powerful, and true. You didn't just improve your habits, you transformed your life. That is the power of discipline. That is the meaning of growth. That is how you force yourself, not to suffer, but to become. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep forcing forward. Your story isn't about how you felt. It's about what you did. And it's only just beginning.